Hey sister, I am so glad you are here. In this episode, I'm going to use it as a reintroduction episode. You might be finding me for the first time, but many of you have been around and connected for several years. And so, as you know, I've taken the last couple of years off of recording Becoming Kingdom Fit podcast episodes. And I want to bring you up to speed, kind of behind the scenes, if you will, in terms of what's taken place over the last couple of years from a lens of one, to share transparently with you, and two, truly, sister, for you just to see how amazing God's work is in and through us when we choose to lean in. So for those of you that might be new and you're not sure what this is all about, or you just somebody sent you an episode or it just happened to pop up on your feed, the Becoming Kingdom Fit podcast is on a mission to spread the word about becoming Kingdom Fit. Kingdom Fit is the expression that God gave me for becoming the greatest expression of our God-given potential in mind, body, and spirit. And by doing so, the side effect of that happens to be the body that you never expected and living with greater joy and confidence, even in midlife. Midlife gets to be the best part of life. We already have the wisdom and the knowledge. We get to embrace the season of our hormone transitions and continue to rise above and teach forward all that God has taught us to do. And so that is the primary focus of this episode. We talk, or this podcast, talk about everything related to mind, body, and spirit, as well as topics that are current and apply things that we should be aware of. That's the goal of this podcast. If you're not familiar with me, I have my own transformation story from 27 years ago. It so dramatically changed the trajectory of my life that God, after helping me build a brick and mortar or build a career in corporate America, he called me out of it to go equip and empower other women. That was about 16 years ago. And as a result of doing that, I started all over again. I shared that testimony in the first couple of episodes, but the result of that is that I went from a boot camp at a park to ultimately building 2 physical gyms, small boutique gyms, and helping thousands of people over the last 16 years. When you fast forward again, God called me to close what we absolutely loved, the team, the community. It reached every goal I could have imagined and then some. And God called me out of that to close it permanently so that I could go online unapologetically allow my coaching and my programs to be rooted and grounded in His Word. And then over the last couple of years, this is where I took a little bit of a hiatus, not a little bit, a lot of it, of a hiatus from the Becoming Kingdom Fit podcast episode, which originally started back in 2020, I think was the first episode, when God just impressed my heart to just start sharing the messages that He was giving me, the teaching forward, the lessons He had already taught in and through me. And I really didn't expect anything from it. Now we've got, well over 7,000 downloads later from something that's been done very part-time. Even in jumping on to restart this, there's been over 300 downloads, which may not sound like a lot, but I haven't there's been over 331 downloads in the last 30 days. And I've not done a new episode in 2 to 3 years. So all of that to say and affirm that I truly believe that if you have found this, you are in the right place, and it's not by coincidence that you found it. So what I can tell you going forward is that I'll continue to bring to you the lessons that He's taught me and how to care for our bodies so that we do become her greatest expression of our God-given potential in mind, body, and spirit, as well as what He impresses upon me to share with you as we go. Fair enough? So those of you that have been around for quite some time, you're probably wondering where I have been. And I'm only going to go through the highlights that I know are going to have value and meant to be shared forward. And when I say highlights, I mean because God works all things out for our good. When I originally took a hiatus, it was really to just focus on the coaching and the programs. And I think at the time there was, if I'm being honest now, hindsight being 2020, there was just so much going on that I needed to have a season where I was scaling back a little bit so that I could focus on family while simultaneously focusing on clients and what God was calling me to do in and through the business. And then I also did take some time out of business for a variety of reasons, and worked alongside some amazing people in their businesses. And I'm super grateful for those opportunities. And yet I know that my core mission is to equip and empower other women to create their transformations just as God has done in and through me. And that has never changed. That's always been every choice that I've made over the last several years, even with working along other side. It was to learn an aspect of something that I wanted to learn. It was to grow further personally. It was to continue my personal pursuit of becoming my best version of myself in mind, body, and spirit, so that I can be the example and also be the vessel God has called me to be for each and every woman that crosses my path, whether it's as a coaching client or on a podcast episode. And as that is moving along, I would say 2025 is the year to highlight the most, because 2025, I'm taping this right now as of, today is April 19th, I believe. No, April 10th. April 10th, Friday, April 10th. And as of this, 2026, and 2025 was a year that I anticipated to be exponential momentum for becoming Kingdom Fit, for becoming Kingdom Fit Sisterhood at the end of 2024. And the reason this is relevant, I'm going to tell you in just a minute the details, but it ended up being a year that I never expected, and not in all the great ways that you would initially anticipate. But God works all things out for our good. So at the end of 2024, God gave me a really big mission and a really big vision. So much so that, again, I asked him, Lord, are you sure? Like, you're calling me to do this and what? And I shared that vision with the women that were connected within our Kingdom Fit Sisterhood at the time, and various coaching programs, in the expectation of sharing the vision of what to see in 2025 and what was coming for Kingdom Fit Sisterhood, and how we were evolving. And then 2025 starts, and in February, I got a call from my husband saying, I'm okay, but I'm on my way to the hospital. And I'm having I don't think he said he was having heart palpitation. He had tightness in chest, and he just knew something was off. The result of that is he was having a massive heart attack, not the visible signs of a heart attack. He was having tightness of breath, tightness of chest, short breathing. He was out of country in Canada on site. There happened to be somebody working with him that day that had a similar experience with their heart attack, and told him immediately to go to the hospital, and he did. Now, he had been seen for this type of feeling in the United States during 2020, so 4 years earlier, and he was turned away without any testing other than a COVID test. And now he happened to be in Canada, happened to have a doctor on duty that did not just look at the initial test, and chose to test deeper and go deeper to learn that he had a 99% blockage of his major artery leading to his heart. Needless to say, we're very grateful that he is strong and healthy today. We're now celebrating a year of health and well-being for him, but that is what started in February. And it also involved, me flying to Canada. I'm super grateful for everything, the ability and the support of his company, and getting me connected with all the right people, getting me on the next flight possible, so that we could spend the next couple of weeks in Canada as he was recovering, and then come back home. And then my decision was to travel with him for a while as he's developing new habits and health styles and all those types of things, because as I share with his permission very transparently, is that my husband's heart attack was like so many people do, men and women. We minimize the blood reports, we minimize the blood work, we minimize the little things that really, when left unchecked, turn into a compounding event. And so it was the Trojan horse, because there was nothing major wrong. It was just years and decades of really not caring for himself at the level in which we are called to care for ourselves. And that Trojan horse of the blood work's okay, it's borderline, it's, well, this could be better, but I'm doing okay over here. The same thing that I cannot even tell you how many men and women, because I used to coach men as well, have come to me over the years. And usually they are coming to me after they've had an event, after their blood work is significant enough for their doctor to prompt them to take action, or after they're on several medications and they realize they don't want to be on the medication for the rest of their lives and feel like, is there something I can do? The answer is yes. And the answer is don't wait. Be proactive. Don't think. And just like with my husband, incredibly busy with work, a lot of responsibilities. And so it is very common to think I can take care of it later, or I'll put more effort into it then, or I don't have time. You don't have time not to. You don't have time not to get regular health checkups. You don't have time to not take what is coming up for your blood work seriously. And we'll talk about this in other episodes, but I will also tell you that the doctor's definition of what is okay or what is borderline isn't always accurate. It's comparing it to an average benchmark in the United States where over 70% of the population is overweight. And to the extent in which we're carrying extra weight is to the extent in which you are at greater risk for dis-ease. Again, we'll talk about this more in other episodes. And so you can't afford to not prioritize your health and well-being if your goal is to live a long, healthy, optimized life. Anything short of proactively prioritizing your own self-care, your own well-being. We're actually going to talk about this again in the upcoming free masterclass. I'll drop a link below. If you missed the one that's next Tuesday, I'm sure there will be future masterclasses or something of the like for you to get connected and involved with. Understanding that you just don't have time to not do that. And in the masterclass, one of the things I talk about is the fact that it isn't discussed enough in the church, but self-care is not selfish. It actually is biblical, because you cannot give your best if you're not at your best. And of course, my husband, like so many, needed to learn it the hard way to some extent, right? In February, I was traveling with him to help him adapt, and just, you go through that with your husband, and I have the flexibility of working from wherever I want to be. And so between helping him with new habits and really just my own wanting to make sure that he's okay and all that kind of stuff, I started traveling with him to his job sites. And we were in North Carolina, and I got a call from my sister that my dad was in the hospital and they weren't sure if he was going to make it. This was, husband's heart attack was in February. The call came in, I think on March 10th, mid-March. And I flew from North Carolina to Vegas. My dad was there visiting Vegas. And there's so many stories within this. And I want to be respectful in that it's not just my story. I will tell you this, I am the person that you would least expect, because of family dynamics, to be the one to stand in the gap in that season. And yet, by God's work in and through me, I became the voice that was his cheerleader, his advocate. Y'all know that I have a bold voice, but again, I'm trying to be diplomatic and just saying, given the dynamics of relationships at the time, and the strain that my dad and I had in our relationship over the years, I held no ill will because of my faith, because of the work that I've done in and through me for decades now. And also, there are dynamics within the family that made all things challenging when it comes to interacting with individuals. And so I'll leave it at that. I ended up being the person that was able to be present the whole time. So minus a few days here and there where someone else came in and helped as well. But in that hospital, when I showed up, my dad was on 20 different IV bags behind him. Every single organ had shut down. At one point, they weren't even sure if I would be able to make it from North Carolina to Vegas, if he would make it that long. But thankfully he did. And when I got there, 20 IV bags behind him, his lungs were not fun. He wasn't breathing on his own. He had a trachea insert, a breathing tube inserted. His kidneys were failing, so he had a 24/7 kidney machine. His heart was disrupted, so he was on what's called an Impala, which is an amazing tool. It's actually functioning as the heart. And I feel like I'm missing something. So everything was shutting down. And in that room, all that mattered was his healing. And over the next several days, as you know, kind of the bulk of the people that had been there initially started to needing to go on, I got to sit with my dad, and I got to be present and pray over him and lay hands on him, sister. I'm convinced that's a big part of his healing. And so when he started to improve and started to get better, he was then under for so long, they were concerned about ICU dementia. And they call it a brain injury and brain trauma when they have been out for so long. And it's questionable as to whether they'll ever get it back. So there was a season where my dad was waking up and scared, or waking up and not sure where he was at. And I ended up being the person that was able to reassure him. I ended up being the person that was able to remind him that he's okay. I ended up being the person that was advocating with him for the doctors. And he has incredible nieces on his wife's side. Him and his wife have been married for 30 plus something years. So there were other people present. I was the one, because of my position, in addition to my stepmom, that I was able to just be there, the consistent person, the consistent voice, the one that literally slept in this little chair. I took a picture of it. By his side for 4 weeks at the hospital, from critical care to intensive care to ultimately acute rehab, and be his cheerleader and remind him that he can and that he will, speaking life over him and not allowing anything negative to be spoken in his presence, praying, listening to worship music. And I really think it was by God's work in and through him and his willingness. And one of the things I told him, he's like, my family is, 2 generations away from dirt poor Appalachian Mountains. And my dad is one of the people that, or not one of the people, but he is the original person within his family. In addition to my aunts, they both did well as well, that changed the dynamic, that changed the trajectory of our history, and went into the military and did all these things. And so as I'm praying over it, I'm like, Dad, you are too stubborn to let their words be truth over your destiny. And, praying healing over him. It was just such an amazing, incredible presence of God all around. And my dad is not a believer. So as we go through that, once we get him out of the hospital and I physically go with him to fly him home along with another niece to help with my stepmom as well. And then it was months of being able to be there with him and be at his home by the support of my husband, who is just amazing and never even thought twice. He honestly was one of the core reasons why I went in the first place, is because of the words that he was speaking into me by God's work in and through him. And in the timing that I went and the fact that I continued to stay, there's just so much to it. And what I will tell you this is that my dad is 100% healed now a year later. God's promise that he will restore the time that the locusts have lost is 100% true. I've witnessed that firsthand in not only my dad's healing, but in the relationship that him and I have. I hate that he had to experience what he experienced. And also I have a relationship with my earthly father that I really never expected to have. And I'm so incredibly grateful for that. So that was really consuming. It's only up until the last few months where now my visits to him and my time there have kind of spread out a little bit more. In that I still go every 8 to 12 weeks to visit with him and to just kind of lay eyes on him and spend time, because one of the things that Jesse Utzler really impressed upon me is, as your parents get older, it's not a matter of how much time you have, it's a matter of how many visits you have, right? So there's many reasons why I'm really grateful that I have the flexibility to see him on a regular basis, even still. And the first couple of months I was there more than I was home. So that was quite the journey, and God is a miracle worker. That's the bottom line. Then towards the end of the year, my husband was given a phenomenal opportunity within his company. So then we had a big decision to make, which was move from California to Texas. So that really became our focus towards the end of the year. And we're now settled in Texas. Absolutely love it. That in and of itself is a prophecy fulfilled. God told me several years ago, gave me a vision of moving to Texas, gave me a vision of potentially needing to go first. And I wasn't really sure what that looked like. I thought I had an idea what that looked like. But I know now it's because my husband and I moved here. 2 of our 4, we have a blended family. So 2 of our 4 came with us. 2 of our 4 have not come with us yet. And one that has not come with us yet is my biological son, who I just never, since the time he was a baby, I just have more time with him. He's 27. So since the time he was a baby, I always imagined living in close proximity so that I can be the involved, like keep the connection with him, but then also be the involved, what have you. And so making the decision, now he wasn't that close to begin with anyway. We were in California, he was in Vegas, but I got to see him quite a bit. So realizing now that here we had this opportunity to come to Texas, and it is me needing to come first meant, I believe it was the foresight, knowing that we would have to leave 2 they have a choice, right? But they choose to stay where they are for now. It's just amazing to watch God work and understand the power of, I don't think there's anything special about me that allows me to have we're all special and unique. But what I mean is not in a self-condemnation way, just that having this kind of relationship with God and having this type of experience is not something that's unique to me. It's something that I'm able to experience because I've cultivated the depth in my personal relationship with him, because I'm far from perfect, but I cultivate having a healthy infant lifestyle. One of the things I teach in our masterclass is that one of the biggest places where the church misses the mark is not talking about the importance of our health and well-being, because the importance of our health and well-being is that it impacts our vessel. The one vessel God gave us, or really 3 vessels that God gave us to use in order to be in relationship with him, to just experience all that his word says for us is to experience, to be able to even recognize the unique call on our life, and then be able to cultivate it and develop it and then deploy it in service to others in a way that honors him, is all dependent on the quality of our vessel, the quality of health in our body and our mind, and our connection to his spirit in and through us. Again, we go through more of that in the masterclass too, so I can explain it more articulately. And you can click the link for the masterclass, or if you want it, kind of a speed learning course, if you will, or conversation. And then of course I'll continue to share here too. But after the decision to move, and it all coming together and realizing, as much as it was hard, we are now here about 2 months, and absolutely love it. And there's so much resistance that came up within that whole move. And it always, whenever you're stepping into the next iteration of what God is calling, there's always going to be disruption. There's always going to be something. That would be Max. There's always going to be some sort of disruption, some sort of resistance. And it's not a matter of whether it will come, it's a matter of when it will come and how you will respond to it. Remember, in 2024, I thought 2025 was the year. And I know that it was divine for the events to take place. And for me, I made the right choices on what to focus on that year. And also now I get to lean into what God gave me the vision for at the end of 2024. And I'm so lit up, excited, and even more grateful. And I'm even more positioned to be the steward for every single woman that he puts in front of me, for the expansion of Kingdom Fit Sisterhood and so much more, because of the lessons I chose to learn from the 2025 year. And then bringing it up to speed to address the elephant in the room. My scar, if you're watching this on YouTube, is very prevalent on my face right now. And even that gets to be a massive ministry, and I'm so grateful for it. The story behind that is that I had a little spot on my face, and it's been there, admittedly, for a couple of years. I initially thought it was another age spot, and then I thought it was just a funky pore. And then I started to realize that there's something that maybe is off. And the reason that really prompted me to start looking at it is because another woman that I've known for well over a decade shared her journey with skin cancer. And so God did have to nudge me a couple of times because I did get caught up in the busy, and I kept thinking, I got to go get it checked. I'm going to go get it checked. And over the last, several months or so. So once we got here and got settled, I went in and got it checked, and I still wasn't really expecting to hear, yes, you have skin cancer. Now, thankfully, mine was a basal cell carcinoma, which means that it's not life-threatening. However, it is something you have to take care of. The graphic piece of it, I guess, if you will, is that even though basal cell carcinomas are not life-threatening, it's not the type of cancer that can, pop up in one spot and then another spot. It will leave a hole in wherever it devours if you don't get it taken care of. The other blessing is that basal cell carcinoma is very slow growing. So that would be why I've looked back at pictures and I've had it for a couple of years, and it just developed over time. The process that I went through over the last couple of months was also very difficult. Not last couple of months, literally last month. I had done the research on what actions to take in response to the skin cancer, and I had decided to find a surgeon that has Mohs procedure. So I'm going to invite you to go get your skin checked, even if you don't think you have a thing. Some people are really great at, doing their annual checkups. I'm not one of those people, and I will be going forward. The second step is obviously depending on what type of cancer it is, but if you're a candidate for Mohs surgical procedure, I highly can encourage you to look that up, MOHS. It's a process in which they basically take what they believe it might be just by a little bit, and then they test it on site, and then they go back and they test the skin around it, and then if there's still cancer cells there, they'll remove it. So they'll continue to go through that process until they're confident they've gotten it all done. The challenge with that is that I walked in thinking that I had this spot that's about the end of my finger, and it actually was. It was like about that big is what the spot was, just that little tiny thing. And when I showed up for surgery, I learned that they would need to create an incision from just under my eye to underneath my nose. And the process was hard, but I continued to show up. I think the lesson in that is the nurse said, I know you weren't prepared for the extent of this. If you need to reschedule, it's totally fine. And I said to her, no, I putting this off is only going to make it bigger in my head. And the surgeon said, you just have to trust the process. And I said, I trust God, and I know that I was led here by him. So I'm going to trust him and the steps that he, allows me to take, or it has in front of me to take. And so by the time I left, I ended up with a very large incision, and I was sharing on Facebook and in Instagram stories, like the process and how excited I was that I had beat the odds, because they told me I would have a closed eye for 2 weeks. They told me my eye would probably close. They told me I'd have a black eye for 2 weeks. They told me my face would be extremely swollen, and my progress was amazing because I focused on the key skills that God had given me. So much of what we do and so much of what we experience starts with, for as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Again, I teach this in the masterclass. And so I chose to focus on healing. I chose to focus on healing scriptures. I chose to focus only on what was positive. I chose to visualize Habakkuk 2:2-3. Again, another principle we apply to our health and well-being. I applied it to my healing. And so I was like beating the odds. My eye never closed. I never got a black eye. So I go in to get the stitches removed thinking I'm going to get like AA stars. And they looked at the incision. They go, what have you been putting on it? And I've not been putting anything other than that they told me to. So I was thinking they were like just amazed by how well I was healing my eye, and I hadn't seen my face. And she said, well, it looks redder. I'm going to bring the surgeon in. Or she didn't say that. She said, I'm just going to have the surgeon look at it real quick. And then he came in and he said, well, it's more raised and it's redder than we expected. And the long story short of that is that they think that one, it's actually got a little bit of cover up on it now, not like intentionally trying to hide a scar. I just am trying to build the habit of wearing sunscreen. And so I got a sunscreen that's a little bit tinted. And so it's actually not as red. Plus it has gone down now. It's been about a week since I got the stitches out. And the reason I want to share that with you is because when we were in the room and they had taken the stitches out and they were asking me what have you, we found out that I did have a reaction to something that I was putting on my face. I talked about that more in the Instagram reel that I did, and or it's also on Facebook. You can go back and look at kind of the details of all that. What I will tell you is that when I was in the office, I didn't even look at the scar. I was so trying to process what it is that they were telling me, and then told me to come back in 3 weeks and let's look at it again and figure out what the next step is. And the nurse said something to me. She's like, I know you're really, really strong and I'm super proud of you. And so I know that we as strong women, we have our moment and then we pull it together. So you've got a long drive home, because I had driven specifically like an hour to go to this particular office, and you just pull yourself together and you enjoy the ride. And I got to the car and I saw my scar for the first time and I cried. That was my reactive thought, was to cry and to have all these stinking thinking thoughts. But because of the work that I've done for over 2 decades now, because of the work that I get to teach forward, I was able to then, I called my husband, and he's amazing. So he answered the phone despite I could tell he was in a meeting, and he did reassure as well. But within about a 15-minute span, I went through thinking about all the worst case scenarios. I like the old version of me wanting to hide and wanting to like not show up on camera, and thinking about this masterclass that is coming up and all these things, to, okay, those are not helpful thoughts. And this is what is happening right now. This is the reality that I have in this moment. So I'm going to do my part, but also I'm not going to shrink. I am not going to let that win. And in fact, I'm going to do the opposite of what that voice is telling me to do. And so I got off the phone with my husband and took the drive home and switched within a few minutes from that shrinking and crying and thinking of like all of the reactive stinking thinking thoughts, to deciding to respond in a way that was honoring, deciding to respond in a way that was worshiping, and sung his praises all the way home in expectation. And then of course I already shared kind of the healing of the eye itself. I carried that all the way through. I continue to carry that through with the scar, and just surrendering the result. I'm going to do my part in its healing, and I know it's still just fresh is a big part of it. And also I will do my due diligence. I'm looking into various like red light therapy and different processes that I can control, and then I surrender the result, and whatever it becomes, it comes, but I will not allow it to cause me to shrink. And in the meantime, God, within about a 24-hour time period, really impressed upon me, while it's a very visible scar, it becomes an opportunity to share the story with other men, but I mostly interact with women, to remind them and encourage them to get their skin checked, to share the process, to share the journey. And although my skin cancer was not life-threatening, there are forms that are life-threatening that we don't take seriously enough. And so to be able to share that message is just another gift and another blessing. So that is the accumulation of where I am today. That brings you up to speed. Future episodes will go back to the teaching and back to sharing God's wisdom, and back to, I do feel called to speak truth on some of today's cultural topics. I feel like we're in a time where God is asking us to be bold, to continue to speak truth from a lens of love and kindness. But as that saying goes, when good men do nothing is when evil men prevail. And I think we are in that season. So I will be sharing when God really put something strongly on my heart to share forward in terms of cultural perspectives and or what is happening in today's society. I am so glad you made it to the end of this. I would love to hear from you. What was your biggest takeaway from this episode? How can you apply it? I know I shared a lot about kind of bringing you up to speed with my story, but I invite you to take some quiet time, think through what I've shared today, think through this episode, and ask God in your quiet time, what did you want me to hear from Rebecca's message? What did you want me to focus on? What action can I take, or what do I need to be aware of, or what can I start applying right now? And if you're open to sharing, I would love to hear it. It would just affirm that that again, I'm following in his obedience. I have definitely been delayed in my obedience, which is disobedience, but better late than never. Amen. All right. And if you want to join us on the masterclass, type masterclass below, and that'll give you the details on whatever that next iteration of the masterclass is, as well as Kingdom Fit Sisterhood is doors are opening next week also. All right. Love you. Bye for now.